Okay, I think we should get and can get started. Thank you all for being here at this. Okay, yeah, now it's on. Somewhat unusual session at an annual meeting of the SLE, but the SLE board, executive committee, and also me personally, we are quite interested to communicate with our community about communication about linguistics to the wider audience, and even somewhat more generally, even outreach in general. But I want to make that into a question or topic anyway. So that's the topic of this session. That should also be immediately clear from what I've just said. Add one character to the title of the whole of the session. Namely, it's really the question. There are really questions there that we would like to talk to you about and have input also from you about. What should we be doing, if anything? And a possible answer is even SLE has no job here. There's no task for SLE here. But if there is some consensus of that there is a task for SLE here, then it is the next question, the actual question. Okay, how? So how and what exactly are we going to do there? So my motivation for bringing up this topic and taking this initiative is that there are in Europe, our working area of SLE, scattered initiatives in this domain. So I would actually be interested to hear from the people now gathered in this room, how many of you know about the existence of this blog in Denmark? Okay. Let me go and see if we can get there. Lingoblog at the website lingoblog.dk. And you can see here that there are actually versions of this Danish blog in a number of major European languages. And what this is precisely that, a blog to popularize, relating it to themes of the day, actuality, news, but also sometimes just fun things that people have thought of about language. So returning, this is one of these scattered initiatives, and I'll be presenting more, and we'll be hearing more about others later. But the fact that they're so scattered was something that made me think, perhaps there is something for SLE to do here, and definitely we would already be interested to hear about more knowledge of this type of existing initiatives and resources. Our situation differs from that in North America in particular, where our sister association, the Linguistic Society of America, has a tradition already for a long time that's not being displayed on your screen. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, I'm not going to show the website, so that's going to be apparently too complicated for the computer to handle. So anyway, you have you can see the links here. These are links that were also included in the call for this session. And lincom.org is actually in the practice also a virtually all-American, Northern American initiative that is associated with a more general initiative of SciComm.org, sciencecommunication.org, it's a special subgroup of those. And I recommend you, if you're interested in this kind of thing, to have a look at those things. So as I said, the questions that we want to address here is, should SLE develop outreach activities, and if so, of what kind? And there's one thing that we should, of course, immediately take into account as a difference between Europe and North America, the diversity, linguistic diversity of Europe. So if we're going to do linguistics communication, then we will have to do that, in my opinion, in the native language of the audiences that you're going to address. So we have to do that in different ways. And well, maybe there are still possible roles for SLE, even if it cannot do, the situation in Europe is such that we cannot do linguistics communication ourselves directly to a wider audience. There are still possible roles for the society. Besides linguistics communication, perhaps be a resource for providing expertise on linguistic issues of any kind of social kind that arises somewhere, and make ourselves known as a potential source in something. Can we do that? Do we have the expertise? If we focus on linguistics communication, could we have a role, and would that actually be useful? Would that be effective? Would that help? And we have to learn that from people who are engaged in it primarily, to organize exchanging practices and experiences in different parts of Europe. Would we have a role in trying to play a public role in linguistic issues, for example, on the level of the European Union or of individual European governments concerning issues of language? Should we be lobbying at political institutions? And you could probably think of more of those issues. And those are the kind of things and themes that I would like to see discussed today. So here is an idea for how we could organize the hour and a half that we have at our disposal to get as much out of it as possible. But I propose it, and if somebody has a better idea, then feel free or amend it in some way. I've just started the introduction. I will be telling a little bit about my own experience, just giving 2 examples about the situation in the Netherlands. And then we have 3 already prepared contributions by Chiara Zanchi, Christian Roncero, do I pronounce your name? Roncero, and Katarzyna Jubelski. And then, of course, anybody else who has something to tell about experience that they have or ideas that they would like to share can contribute as well. But then at 3:30, I would suggest that we split up randomly in, say, we're looking at the audience now, 3 or 4 groups, excuse me, to discuss the issues and taking the questions that I put on the previous slide as guidelines, and come up with some proposals for what the ideas of what the SLA might be doing and should be doing, and not only come up with a whole long list of wonderful ideas that we might all be doing, but prioritize them and take into account that the SLE has limited resources and especially financially. We're not a funding agency, so wonderful ideas about what we could all be trying to pay for are a priori not going to work. So take that into account and come up with, try to get at ideas of proposals for SLE activities. And then in the last half hour, I'd like to come back to that, report from these groups, see if similar things come out, and if the different things come out, have a discussion on the pros and cons and see where that goes, evaluate the arguments, and round up with a general discussion. Okay, does that make sense? Can you all, can we live with that? Okay, then to move on to my own experience. In the year 2006 in the Netherlands, me and a couple of colleagues, based on a large amount of work, especially by students from their both undergraduate and graduate master thesis, published a book called, the English translation of which is Linguistics for the Second Phase of High School Education. So just prior to going to college, and it was really meant and produced as a course book for students. And our intention was, and that's why we also had it, a second, smaller volume for with teachers, instructors' instructions, so to speak, manual for teachers along with it. But our intention was that it would be so much like a high school textbook, that it could be incorporated into the program by high schools. Nobody did. Yeah. On the other hand, it's to some extent had some success. We still actually get some revenues out of it every year because it is being used, especially parts of it, 1, 2, 3 chapters of the thing, by specific projects that are undertaken by high school students. That there are room for projects in the final stages of their training in the Netherlands, and some of them and they have to pick their own topic, and some pick is stimulated by their teachers a linguistic topic, and then they often still use, although it's from 2006, much of the material that we produced in this book. But it never worked what we intended. It never became what we intended it originally to be. Another one that had somewhat different goals and aims arose like this. In the year 2000, around the turn of the millennium, so to speak, in the Netherlands, there was an initiative, a politically instigated initiative, to create a historical canon of the country. So what are the 50 things that everybody should know about the history of the Netherlands? And there was an official committee, and that produced this, and it was introduced, and that actually, it's actually a nice sort of thing, and it's being updated and revised continuously. But especially a couple of colleagues in the natural sciences were a bit annoyed by all that history, only history there, and thought they should also produce a canon, 50 things that everybody should know about the natural sciences and their importance for society. And produced a book called the Beta Canon, the Canon of Natural Sciences. And that in turn stimulated some linguists to produce a thing called the language canon. 50 things that everybody should know about language, and they produced it. It was published and partly stimulated by the same publisher as the natural sciences thing. So we have there everything you always wanted to know about language in Dutch, the language canon, the taalkanon. But it goes with, unlike that book of ours, it goes with a website, taalkanon.nl, entirely in Dutch, of course. But if you want to have a look at, would like to see what it looks like, you can go there and get an idea. And it is especially this, from the very beginning, modular approach that they had that makes it into a relatively successful enterprise. Their goals were not as high as ours to turn linguistics into a high school subject, but what they did aim for, to provide opportunities to do more linguistics, they definitely have been reaching, and it's also still being updated.